Why is it that we will willingly forgive somebody else, even if they're still doing the wrong, and even if it's intentional, but we won't forgive ourselves for things that are still happening in our lives? Hello, friends. Welcome back. I'm Matthew Pilling, Chief Overthinker with a Pilling Perspective. It's been a little while. I apologize for that. Today, I want to overthink a little bit about forgiveness and specifically self-forgiveness. A while back, I was listening to a podcast by a gentleman named Mitch Matthews. He's got a couple of really successful podcasts. This one is his newer podcast. It's called Encouraging the Encouragers. And he, in the early days of this podcast, was talking about a conversation that he had had with one of his coaching clients. And the coaching client shared with him 3 questions that they ask themselves every morning. They start the day by asking, what's something I can be grateful for today? They then ask, what is something that I want or need to accomplish today? And then the third question was the one that even Mitch said kind of surprised him. The question was, what is something that I need to forgive myself for today? And when he said that, there were all sorts of thoughts that popped in my mind all at once. And so I paused what I was listening to and just started trying to process through those thoughts. And what I came up with was interesting. I find forgiveness, when we look at forgiving other people, there are 2 different kinds of responses that you'll see. You'll see people who will say, until they have apologized and made it right, until there's some form of restitution, I can't forgive them because they have to do their part. And there can be something to that. But there are others who will look at the situation and they will say, honestly, even if they've done something that's wrong or something that's offended me, why would I hold on to that prickly cactus that I perceive that they've handed me any longer than I need to? I will forgive them even if they haven't made restitution, and I'll hope that they make restitution, but I'm not going to let what they've done affect me for any longer period of time than is necessary. And in thinking about self-forgiveness, because his question very specifically was, what is something I need to forgive myself for today? The thought came up that often, at least for me, and I presume probably for most people, when it comes to forgiving myself for things, I don't just wait for restitution, I wait for improvement and maybe even perfection before I'm willing to forgive myself. I look at things that I've done and I think I need to make sure that this no longer happens. I need to make sure that this is completely changed in my life, and then I can forgive myself. And the real question is, why do any of us that are in that second group of people that I talked about not treat ourselves the same way? Why is it that we will willingly forgive somebody else, even if they're still doing the wrong, and even if it's intentional, but we won't forgive ourselves for things that are still happening in our lives? And there's a line that I think we need to draw there. We can't just forgive ourselves of anything and everything we're doing wrong and just push it under the rug and sweep it under the rug and not worry about it and not work on improving ourselves. Just excusing ourselves for our faults without doing anything to improve ourselves or to live up to the standard that we know we should be living to is going to cause problems for us internally, and those problems will then be reflected externally as well. But what if, instead of holding ourselves captive, what if instead of making such a high bar be the requirement before forgiveness is allowed, we could forgive ourselves now for the fact that we're human. We could forgive ourselves now for tripping, for maybe not doing things perfectly, knowing that as we forgive ourselves, we're letting go of guilt and shame and negativity that probably is keeping us in the pattern that we found ourselves in, that probably is preventing us from being able to successfully stop doing the thing that we dislike. And I find that to be a very freeing, a very enabling thought. Like I said, I don't think that we can just forgive ourselves for everything and never make any change, never make any difference in our lives. I think that there can be some danger in that. But if we can look at ourselves like we look at others and say, hey, you're trying. And it may not even be the case that we're always trying. It may be that we're still in the thick of things, that we're still living in a way that we know we shouldn't, whether that be in our health, whether that be in our spending, whether that be in our relationships with others, whether that be in our moral choices. There are psychological reasons that we have made the choices that we have made. And yes, we are meant to improve and we're meant to grow. And simply saying, well, because of psychological reasons, it happened, really puts us in a victim spot where we don't have the control. But allowing grace in our own lives, allowing forgiveness to be there so that we can let go of hurt and shame and guilt, and we can stop beating ourselves up and instead approach the problem psychologically, saying these things that happened need to be dealt with correctly, but I can forgive myself and work through it instead of holding on to things longer than we need to. For me, it's been a very freeing thought. The idea as well that came from that podcast of finding something daily. I don't know that we typically have a forgiveness habit when it comes to ourselves. Most of us will run the gamut of the problem that we've run into and eventually get to the point of forgiving ourselves, and that's it. There's not an ongoing practice of it. And as I have thought more and even tried some of that idea of simply finding things to forgive myself for, it's changed how I look at myself. It has changed how I feel about myself. And it's given me some of the hope, I guess I would say, that I'm talking about, where instead of focusing on my flaws, instead of focusing on why did I do that again when I know better, I can focus on figuring out what needs to happen to actually make changes in my life. I hope this idea has been helpful. If it has, like I've said in other videos, please share it. Share it with those you know need to hear this message right now. Hit like, hit subscribe, and come back soon. We will see you again. Thank you.